mom died without a will. And he says, you're not going to believe it, but all of my mom's funds are frozen. I said, oh yeah, that's the law. That's what they will do. She died without a will. And he said, yes. And so here he is dealing with all of the frustrations of his mom not having a will, not being a signer on her account, not even knowing uh, where to look to determine if she had life insurance. All of these things. Listen, next week we're going to talk even deeper. I'm going to share with you next week every vital record you need to have. Okay, so join me next week for that. But let us talk about uh, the signer becoming the authorized signer on the account that protects you, and it protects your parents as well or your loved ones. And then here we are with the final number 5. And then we'll wrap up. We'll go back and share all of them very quickly before we close out today. But I want to tell you again now what the authorized signer is allowed to do. The authorized signer is a person who has access to the bank account but doesn't own the funds in the account. Okay? You have access to the account. You can write out checks and et cetera, et cetera. But you do not own the funds in the account. There are limited rights differentiate the difference between the authorized signer and the joint signer. The joint signer is the last one that we will talk about today, and that is the acronym JOA, Joint Owner Account. The Joint Owner Account. Now, what is the Joint Owner Account, you might say? Now, your loved one has to desire for you to do this first and foremost. So you're going to have to talk to them and see if they want you to be the joint owner on the account. When we went to the bank, my mother said, no, I need my daughter's name on all of my accounts. And so I became a joint owner of the accounts. And there are some pros and cons to that. And you can find that out more in the ebook. Okay. But what happens when you are the joint owner of the account? When your loved one passes, the account is in your name as well. You wouldn't have to have POD on the account, but it is a good thing to have. But you are authorized then as an authorized signer who owns the account because it's a joint account. Their funds are now your funds. You are able to take care of the business that need to be taken care of without the possibility of having to go to court to have established a person over the estate, and eliminating all of those TAS. TAS. And if you do not know what TAS means the authorized signer. Are you an authorized signer on your husband, grandparents, whomever you're taking care of, daughter, son? Uh, are you an authorized signer on their bank account? Listen, the reason I say this is because I remember going to the bank with my mama, and she had said to the teller how much money she wanted to get out of the account. And she said, okay, Miss Catherine, you need to sign it. And mama said, no, my baby going to sign it for me. And she said, well, she's not supposed to do that. She said, I said, my daughter's going to sign for me. And she went on in a very kind way, didn't want to get that temperature rising with my mom, and said, well, we're just saying this because, legally your daughter could be charged with forgery for signing your name without your consent on your bank account documents. And so mama looked at it and she said, okay. And she said, well, you might want to come into the bank soon and have her put down as an authorized signer. And mama looked at it and said, okay. And mama said, all I want her to do is give me my money. Because that's how my mom, she had a personality out of this world. Lovable to the end. Thank you, Jesus. And even now, I love her more. But let's talk about the TAS and why that is important. Because you really can be charged with forgery. Because what are you doing? You're signing someone's name, AS. TAS. And if you do not know what TAS means the authorized signer. Are you an authorized signer on your husband, grandparents, whomever you're taking care of, daughter, son, uh, are you an authorized signer on their bank account? Listen, the reason I say this is because I remember going to the bank with my mama, and she had said to the teller how much money she wanted to get out of the account. And she said, "Okay, Miss Catherine, you need to sign it." And Mama said, "No, my baby gonna sign it for me." And she said, "Well, you know she's not supposed to do that." She said, "I said my daughter's gonna sign for me." And she went on in a very kind way, didn't want to get that temperature rising with my mom, and said, "Well, we're just saying this because legally your daughter could be charged with forgery for signing your name without your consent on your bank account documents." And so Mama looked at it and she said, "Okay." And she said, "Well, you might want to come into the bank soon and have her put down as an authorized signer." And Mama looked at it and said, "Okay." And Mama said, "All I want her to do is give me my money." Because that's how my mom, she had a personality out of this world. Lovable to the end. Thank you, Jesus. And even now, I love her more. But let's talk about the TAS and why that is important, because you really can be charged with forgery. Because what are you doing? You're signing someone's name. There's so much I want to share, but it's just not enough time in this podcast to do it. So if you'd like more details on the family business of caregiving, please pick up my ebook, scan the QR code above, and I promise you, you will not regret purchasing it. If you need more information about the family business of caregiving, check out my ebook. But I really wanted to share this text message that I received about the ebook. It reads, "I'm glad you asked me to read it. It was a lesson for me. I needed to take action on all the vital lessons you mentioned for my mother and myself for my boys. It's a conversation I really do not want to have with my mother, and my boys probably don't want to have with me, but I know it's necessary." Check it out, guys. You can go ahead and scan the QR code and pick up your ebook today. All right, I want to talk about the dual power of attorney for just a few more seconds because this is the one I get so many questions from across the country about. You want to get the dual power of attorney. The dual power of attorney authorizes you to handle the financial and the medical affairs of your loved one. Often, power of attorneys must be recorded in written form and be notarized, and usually have to get it through an attorney. Check with your state because each state is different. Did you know that the dual power of attorney, like the power of attorney, ends the moment your loved one stops breathing? That means without the third acronym that I'm going to talk about, their accounts will be frozen. You will not be able to pay for funeral services. You will not be able to pay for taxes or any of the immediate needs that have to be addressed when a loved one dies. So it is important for you to know this third acronym and take action immediately. The third acronym is POD. POD, paid on death. Okay? Every caregiver should have this on their checking account, savings account, and on their business accounts. Don't leave anything out. Paid on death. Now, let me step back and give you a backstory on POD, pay on death. Many years ago, now probably almost 15 years ago or longer, I was in a conference and we had worked overtime and I was taking a late lunch in the hotel restaurant. And across from me were two Caucasian men, and they were talking, and the conversation started with one of the persons saying, "You know, my brother, who never looked after my mother, never even came to see about her, had the audacity to go to the bank as soon as he found out that she had passed to try to withdraw the funds from the accounts." He said, "Fortunately, I had POD on the account and he couldn't get anything. While I'm waiting on the ambulance to come, while I'm waiting to get all of the necessities done for my mother immediately after her death, here he is running to the bank, but he wouldn't even come and see mom." At that point, I'm saying, what in the world is a POD? And I was more interested in the POD than I was preparing for the conference that I had to speak the next morning. But I looked and found POD. The research was vital. Little did I know, some 20 plus years, I guess, later, I would have to use POD, paid on death. Now, remember, it's a simple process. You will have to go with your loved ones to the bank and you would have to request that POD be put on all of the accounts. That simply means when your parent, your loved one passes, the person name is listed as the POD, the person to be paid on death, will be able to utilize those funds, eliminating the fact that there may not be a will at the time of death. You will not have to go through the process of going through court to establish an executor of the estate, and the monies will not be tied up. You can immediately use them. So remember, POD. If you do not have that on your savings account, check-ins account, or your professional accounts, please consider doing that and doing that immediately. I want to footnote something right here because it was last week, because I'm following up, and this is something you guys should do. Every 3 years or so, you should be contacting all of the companies that you have uh, business with and you have beneficiaries listed. You should follow up to make sure that information is still there, that it is correct. And you should ask them to send you a copy of the face page so that you have the documentations for your loved ones on file. We'll talk about this next week in the podcast in more detail, but you need to make sure that you have all of your documents with your beneficiary's name in a file that your loved ones will be able to get. That file should be in the air. It should be on a memory stick as well as in on paper. Now we're going to go forward now with our fourth acronym. I hope this has been a blessing to you because I want to share this information because many times we don't know the questions to ask that we need to ask while we're going through this process. Are you ready? All right, let's go to our fourth acronym. All right, now we're down to the fourth. That's right, number four. The fourth acronym that every caregiver, every human being, every person that has business, every person that's alive need to know these five acronyms that I'm sharing today. And I'm sitting here reminiscing and thinking how all these life lessons that I will share, that's in the ebook that I've shared in reference to my mom and our experiences and having to do this. This one right here really brings back a lot of memories. The fourth acronym that you should know is TLC.